Anyone that's already on, are we expecting Susie Garrettson to join? That's not someone I'm aware of.
Hello, Susie's with us at CCC.
Okay, great, thanks.
Rhonda, for you and IT, there is a black box in the middle of the slide you are sharing on our side.
I see that too. Oh, that's, thank you. That's, so I can view who's being admitted. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhonda, we do have Chair Wessel on, and do we have quorum?
We do not.
Okay.
Not yet.
So for everyone, we're waiting just a couple more minutes. We are expecting quorum today.
Oh, we have a pretty big crowd. Is that mostly NAPTA staff?
A lot of that looks like our own staff.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Dave, did you aim that at me?
You just tend to occupy a lot of space, Mr. Wagner.
I needed that.
You certainly suck up a lot of oxygen.
I'll have a comeback for you later on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are recording already, aren't we? My apologies.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna leave now.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? This is Tiffany Kerr.
Hi, Tiffany. We hear you.
I always have trouble when I first log on with sound, so I'm glad you can hear me. Thank you.
So we are waiting on either City Manager Clifton or Advisor Jackson to join us to have quorum. Advisor Stahl had something come up today, so he will not be joining us.
So Heather or someone, while we're waiting, how's ridership? Is it still trending up?
I'm going to ask Busy if she's available to comment. I know she just ran some ridership reports for us.
I guess she's
And
not
it's-
available.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find my Zoom. Hi, Chairwave, Dave Wessel. Yes, March was actually higher, 3,000 trips higher than projected, 125,000. Let's see, trying to remember what I think we're on track to be at 1.3 million trips this year. By the end of fiscal year June. So it's positive. We're still at 51%. If we reach that 1.3 million, it's 51% of 2019 or normal. So that's very positive. Definitely an increase over last year, which was just under 1 million trips.
Thank you, Busy. And if you could, I would, as we approach the end of the fiscal year or get to the end of the fiscal year, if we could see kind of a quarter by quarter, percent of the year before, just hopefully or maybe pre-COVID, just to see what that trend is looking like, that would be great. So thank you for the report there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So Chair Wessel, it does look like we are 5 minutes past our start time. Do you want to give it a couple more minutes? We cannot call the meeting to order without quorum.
I appreciate that. Is anyone making an effort to reach out to?
I just found Gail's cell phone number, so I'm going to try to text her.
Okay, let's give Rhonda the opportunity to reach out to Gail. We'll see how that goes. Do we know if any of either of the deputy city managers has been appointed as an alternate to Manager Clifton?
Our alternate for the city is Jeff Bowman.
Okay.
And I don't have a cell phone for him yet, so.
I'll text him. How about that?
Kate has already reached out to Jeff as well via Teams, just FYI.
Okay.
Doesn't look like we have a cell phone, but we can. We're connected to the city Teams, so we did drop him a quick message.
I just texted him.
All right.
We'll give it another
Okay.
minute or two. See, in college, it was 10 minutes. If the professor doesn't show up, if he's 10 minutes late, then we can leave. Do we have a policy? I mean, I'm kind of joking. So do we have a policy for this?
We don't have a policy, and then so everyone can be thinking we could run through agenda items. There's nothing that the TAC does that is action. So we could still run through the agenda. We have done that on prior occasions as a uncalled to order meeting. There's no record of the meeting. The meeting would be closed. We would close out the recordings. We could still, as staff at our partner agencies, go through the agenda, but no action can be taken.
I got a positive response from Jeff Bauman, so let's give him a moment to join us, and then we'll call to order and get started.
Great.
Thank you for your help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Advisor Bowman is joining. Looks like we should be good to go. Chair Wessel.
Excellent. Well, I will call the meeting of the Mountain Line Transit Advisory Committee to order here on April 7th at 10:09. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Baumann. Appreciate it. Rhonda, will you do roll call, please?
Okay. Good morning, Chair Wessel and members of the TAC. Coconino County, Tiffany Kerr.
Present.
Coconino County Citizen Representative Jillian Thomas.
Present.
City of Flagstaff Jeff Bowman.
Good morning.
Good morning. Metro Plan Dave Wessel.
Present.
NAU Judy Maynor.
Present.
Our NAU student Maylee Acosta, I believe, is excused. CCC, Kurt Stoll, as I mentioned, will not be available today. If something come up. And Economic Development member Gail Jackson. Did you let someone? No. Okay. She is expected, however, not with us yet. We do have several guests with us for some outside presentations. We have joining us from CCC, Cheyenne. I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, but Grabiak.
Grabiak.
Thank you. President Smith, Susie Garrettson, and Nat White. And we do have our attorney on the line, Chris Beecher.
Good morning, everybody.
And a little bit later, we will have Jana Weldon from the City of Flagstaff regarding our art at the DCC. So I will turn it back to you, Chair Wessel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda, and good morning and welcome, everyone. I'll invite you to pull up the participants list, and you can see the full force of the NAPTA staff that are present in this virtual room with us this morning. Let's move on to the safety minute with Sam Short, our safety manager. Sam?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. So the first safety minute for April is related to mechanical related crashes. So all accidents caused primarily by mechanical issues represent a smaller percentage of all accidents. The statistics are still significant enough to mention. There are many points of failure on vehicles, but there are only a few components that represent most mechanical failures, which lead to accidents. Most of these mechanical issues can be avoided with proper inspections and preventative maintenance. A simple walk around your vehicle prior to operation can avoid an accident. A few things to look for during a quick inspection are looking for low tire pressure. This could signal that you need air in the tire or a patch depending on the problem. Look for any bubbles in your tire, especially on the sidewalls. If there is a bubble in your tire, this means you have a break in the belt and it now is compromised. It is recommended that you use your spare or get it replaced immediately before driving the vehicle because the tire could give way at any time. Start your vehicle and listen for any odd noises. And pull forward and test your brakes before starting your trip. While most of the time you'll never experience any of the above issues, the one time you could result in a serious accident. Take mechanical issues seriously, and when you find one during an inspection, get it fixed by a professional to ensure your vehicle is safe to operate. Thank you and welcome to the April Transit Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from March 3rd, 2022. Those are in your packet. Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes? Going once, twice, three times. Okay, would anyone care to make a motion to approve the minutes from March? I'll make that motion. I move that we approve the March 3rd, 2022 minutes. We have a second.
I'll second for you, Dave, Julie.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 All right, not any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you, everyone. The next item on our agenda is a presentation on Proposition 438 regarding the community college, Coconino Community College. We have Cheyenne, if I heard right, Grabiak. So Cheyenne, welcome. And
Excuse me, Chair Wessel.
yes,
Advisor Thomas has her hand up, and just want to let you know that Advisor Clifton did join us as well.
excellent. Thank you. Yes, Jillian, question?
No, it was up in error. I was voting for the motion.
Oh,
Just passed.
okay. Well, we'll count yours twice. So, and welcome, Manager Clifton. Good morning.
Took me several attempts to hop on. I'm sure the problem was on my end. It typically is, but I apologize for being late. And yeah, good morning to you.
Well, glad you're here. Our Proposition 438 presentation, Cheyenne, if you're ready.
Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, but it needs to go straight to slideshow without the information on the side, Cheyenne.
Is that
Yeah.
better? Okay,
Yes, and thank you for showing us how to do that.
that was actually the first time I had to do that, so.
Go ahead, Cheyenne.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cheyenne Grabiak. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator here at Coconino Community College, and I'm also joined by President Smith and a few members of the TAC and the District Governing Board. Colleen, I don't know if you would like to say something before we start.
Yes, and I will go ahead and move forward with the presentation. And thank you, everyone, for giving us an opportunity to speak with you today. As we move forward here, I want to remind you that we are celebrating our 30-year anniversary at Coconino Community College, and we are also celebrating April, which is Community College Month nationally. And then plus the city passed a resolution for Coconino Community College for this week. On our presentation today, you will see photographs that are photographs of students of ours, either past or present. And so I just wanted you to know they're not pulled off the web. And the wonderful thing about that is it demonstrates that our students, we serve all different ages of students. We have students that come from all different backgrounds and life experiences. And those students are generally living in Coconino County and really contributing to the economy in Coconino County. So let's keep moving, and I'll try to keep this fast. I know you have a lot to talk about. So next slide. Who we serve. Some of you are aware that we serve the whole county. That is our service area. And we have three locations that are college locations. One is our Lone Tree campus, our Page Center campus, and then our 4th Street campus. We also serve areas of the county in high schools and a variety of other ways. Okay, next slide. These are some of our main ways that we serve high school to Coconino Community College. We have concurrent enrollment where students can take a regular set of college courses on our campus or online. We have another way which high school students can earn dual credit in the high school for classes. And then we are partners with Caveat in providing technical and workforce kinds of programs for students before they even graduate. Next slide. These are some of the offerings, and these are things, a lot of these are new offerings that we've worked on for the last couple of years. So I won't spend a lot of time in these, but we need you to know this represents CCC to work. We have other offerings as well, but we offer certificates and applied science degrees where students can immediately go from CCC into the workforce. Next slide. We offer varied degrees and certificates, and we offer transfer degrees, and our articulation for transfer degrees to universities is very successful, and we all share a general education component so that transfers work very well. Okay, next. CCC to university. Our favorite partner is Northern Arizona University. And we also work with the other the other universities. But our CCC to NAU program is a wonderful program. We're all very proud of that. And I am currently working with President Cruz Rivera, and we are expanding that program. We have some exciting ideas and things that we will share with our communities about that program as we go forward. Next. This is our CCC to community. We're very proud of this. This is an area where the college, when there was quite a bit of decline in state funding to the college had to cut several programs. And this is one of them. And we've worked hard to reallocate and to write grants and to get one-time funding to bring this program back. And some of the things in this program have to do with a variety of lectures and talks. That's called Comet Talks, as well as non-credit courses, short-term courses that people can take, as well as some of the workforce training that's for non-credit, such as our CDL truck driving program. And it took us a while to be able to get that program, but as soon as we have had it constantly full, and the students are all, when they exit the program, they're immediately hired. So a lot of our CCC to community might have to do with jobs, but it also might have to do with lifelong learning. And we think that's a very important part of the mission of the two-year college. Okay, next. Small Business Development Center. This is an area that we worked hard to bring back to the college campus, and the SBDC has done quite a few workshops and won awards from the state during the time of the pandemic, which we know has been a very difficult time for all of us. And so those interested in working with SBDC, it's on our campus on 4th Street, and they help with business plans and consulting services. And like I said, a lot of different workshops to help small business owners. Next, strengthening Indigenous students. We're very excited about this, and I should probably let Cheyenne share this, but I know that we're in a hurry, so I'll move on. And in the fall, we received a grant for $2.1 million to serve our Native American students with 4 main objectives. We will have Native American student success centers on our campus in Page and here on our campus in Flagstaff. We have a summer bridge program that is going into effect to encourage students to get a start on their education in any areas they might want to do extra preparation for college, that kind of thing. It'll be a support system for students. And then we are working to stress culturally responsive teaching strategies. So this is something we've been working and wanting for quite some time. We're very pleased that the grant was approved, and the grant proposal, and that we did receive these funds. Next. Okay, what is Proposition 438? It's a reset of the primary property tax that helps serve Coconino Community College and helps the college serve our entire county. And it's a reset. It's not an override. So that's different. And on this chart, you will see that our current tax rate, 0.43, that's approximately 44 cents, compared to the next lowest tax rate in the state for community colleges, which is $1.11. If the voters choose to support this, the tax rate for Coconino Community College, it would be approximately 74 cents. And this is per $100 valuation. So it would still be considerably lower. The district governing board selected this rate because they are very aware of not only cost of living in Flagstaff, but just the times that we live in. They purposefully did not want to make this a burden, but they wanted our community to receive the educational programs that they request, and for the college to be able to do some of the programming that other community colleges do across the state because they have considerable more funding. Okay, next. So when the college was originally formed, the rate was set very low. And when you read information, read the history and talk to people, what we've learned is that at that time, the college was expected to serve approximately 500 to 1,000 students. And yes, we serve well more than that every single semester. And the cut in state support and state funding has continued for quite some time now. And I'm going to explain that a little bit, in that when community colleges were first formed, community colleges are a very American part of the educational system formed in America. And the way they were formed, it was intended that the funding for community colleges would be approximately 30% funded by local property taxes, 30% funded by state appropriations, and then 30% funded by tuition and fees, somewhere around that, 33% actually, but a third, and a third. The purpose for that in the history of community colleges is that every community is different, every service area is different. And so the primary property tax has to do with community colleges being able to serve their local communities and what the needs are of the local business and industry and the needs of students locally. With this chart, you see the smallest community college in the state, which is Northland Pioneer. They serve the fewest number of students, and their total revenue to serve and provide the programs that are requested by their communities is 39.9, almost 40 million. If you see with Coconino Community College, serve more students, our total revenue to serve is 26.3 million. And then the next in size is Mojave, which 46.4, almost 5. So you see the difference in the way that the three different colleges are funded and the resources that they have to try and serve their communities across their county. If the voters choose to move forward with this, then that would take overall revenue for Coconino Community College to approximately 32 million. And we would still be the lowest funded, and yet the college would be able to do many things that are requested of us through this additional funding. Next slide. This is a chart that talks about the property tax rate, and I have a few other folks that are going to talk about that a little bit more, so I won't spend too much time on this. But if you see, for instance, if you have a home that's the limited property value, and that's at the far left side, it shows what you currently pay for property taxes for CCC and what the monthly property tax would be if the reset is approved, and then what the monthly difference is. And they will talk to you a little bit about kind of what that means in your household and how that would apply to you. Okay, next. So what will the funding be used for? We've been working hard to try to meet the needs across Coconino County. We've been requested to do quite a few career and technical education programs, and that's been one of our priorities in the last few years, and we're working to do that. We would be developing new programs to continue to support veterans training. We wrote grants and we were able to really develop a veterans center. And so continuing to enhance that and add additional training for veterans to move into civilian jobs. We would expand scholarship programs with the additional funding and really enhance services throughout Coconino County. I'm sure all of you are aware that Coconino County is the second largest county in the United States. And that certainly is challenging when providing services throughout the county. But the college believes that's an extremely important part of our mission and will continue to work to enhance and improve services. Next, okay. Specifically, what will the funding be used for? I'm told that it really makes a difference if people can see and understand. So it's not like, oh, just trust us. We'll use it to support the community. So these are what we will use it for. Our automotive technology program that we were just able to implement and the classes are full, we would be not only continuing that program, but expanding it. So what does that mean? Why do we need money to continue it? Well, we have been able to work hard with the legislature over the past few years, and we've been able to access some one-time money to start programs that are requested in our communities. So ongoing funding would allow us to continue programs that we've started and allow us to accept more students into programs, as well as provide new programs that the college has been requested. Our CDL truck driving program is another new program within the last year. Early childhood education certificate. This is preschool teachers. And certainly research tells us that if students get an early learning experience of high quality, it makes a difference in them continuing on through education, through their lives and on through higher education. We've started a new assisted living caregiver certificate during the pandemic, and we have found that was greatly needed, not only for people who might work in assisted living, but for many of us who work to help care for our families. Google IT support, this is a certificate. Students can move through quickly and get out and have a well-paying job. Amazon Web Services certificate, cybersecurity. Not only do we have a 2-year associate's degree, but we're developing specific certificates that will help small business owners. Increased number of students in the nursing program. We have done that, and we would like to not only keep the number we've increased to, but expand it more because our local healthcare entities have talked to us about how much they need more nursing. And just an example, because some people are not aware, when you complete an associate's degree in nursing, the national test that you take is the same that students who complete a bachelor's degree. So if you are successful in completing that national test, you are an RN. Now, one of the things that has proved to be very beneficial for students is our program where we collaborate with Northern Arizona University. So students can work to get their courses and to complete their RN with us while continuing on with NAU to complete their bachelor's. And a bachelor's degree does then, even though they can go to work with an associate's and with an RN, a bachelor's degree will always help them be able to move in their career, to be able certainly to make more money and to move into positions of leadership. The Marine Maintenance Technician program, we've been asked for this program up in Page for several years, and we are advertising right now. It slowed us down a little bit during the pandemic, and a lot of things were closed, but we're advertising for this. This will be The faculty member, the successful faculty member for getting this job will be able to teach a lot of different things with small engine repair and repair for boats. And of course, we know with Lake Powell up there, how much that need is. Welding certification, we're working to expand what we offer there. Heating, ventilating, and air condition, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. That's we've got new certificates in those areas, and we're working to expand and offer full coursework in those areas. The hospital has asked us for additional healthcare programs. I've only listed a few here. There are several more that are part of this. These programs, for instance, an ultrasound technician or a surgical technician, these are programs offered by two-year colleges. Students come out and immediately are able to go straight into the workforce with a good career. Electric car and charging station technician. This is very important. And this is something that we've already researched and will be a program we offer if the college has the funding to do it. Manufacturing technology, police academy, and then taking over from the hospital as they've requested us to do, because most of the time paramedic is offered within the community college. So we already have the emergency management services and now taking over the full paramedic program. Okay, next slide, please. So the idea is to help you understand this is what we would be able to provide if the funding was available, and the programs that we would be able to continue and expand and take more students into and really serve our county. And other programs, sometimes when I give this presentation, we have people say to me, well, have you ever thought about this program? Would you offer this because we really need this? And those are the kind of things that we need to hear from across our county. And so thank you so much for letting me explain what the proposition is. The ballot initiative is on the May election. The reason for that is how legislation was written to require it. This is the only time a college has ever tried to do this specific thing, and our college worked hard to get this permission, not only from the legislature, but from the governor. And we have a short amount of time to see if the voters are willing. So it is on the May ballot. And now our governing board chair, Dr. Nat White, is here with us, and Susie, who is a part of a group that champions the college. So if they would like to say a few words and see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Who's going to go first, Dr. White or Susie?
Yes, I'll go first, Dave. Thanks a lot. And
yes, thank you.
And I'll be very brief. You guys know about tax being tax supported one way or the other. You also sophisticated on all of the things that have to do with voting. And I'd just like to say that number one, the May election was defined by the legislature. It's not our choice. Number two, it happens that there's only one thing on that particular ballot, and it's Proposition 438. And number three, we know that the environment right now is not compatible with raising tax. However, that's what the legislature has set up for us, and that's what we have to do. And why do we have to do it? As a board member, the governing board member, which is an elected position in the same districts that the supervisors are elected, one of our major jobs is to oversee the budget of the college. And as the three legs of our budget funding were mentioned by Dr. Smith, state, student fees, and property tax, the only one that we have dependable, the only one that we can really depend on is not fluctuating or even disappearing is the property tax. And as the state funding for education in general, and in particular community colleges, has dwindled over the last 10 years in a very linear way, we can't raise student fees any more than what we have now because we're the highest in the state. And so property tax is our only way of doing it, and has been pointed out, we're really low. The legislature said that we could double it, but not more than double it. We're increasing it by 70% for an average household. Average, I don't know what's average anymore, but say a $500,000 house, that would raise the annual tax by about $100, from roughly about $120 or so to about $200, and that's for the annual tax. That is critical from our budget point of view. It provides a slightly larger dependable source of money for planning ahead, for doing a lot of the things that Dr. Smith pointed out. So I'll just summarize. The election date, the timing, everything was not defined by us, but defined by the state. It is both a mail-in and personal ballot, or in-person ballot. And if it does not pass, the college will go on, but it will not be able to really address some of the needs that are coming as our community grows. The second thing that's important if it does not pass is the legislature said that you could wait for 2 years and try it one more time. And if that doesn't pass, then you have to live with the historically very low property tax that we have right now. So again, I wanted to touch on some of the technical parts of it and some of the parts that you can relate to as far as being tax funded. And really, really would appreciate sharing your positive thoughts about that with friends, neighbors, and anybody else. And I know a lot of you folks, so you can contact me anytime to answer any technical questions or any questions about the college. It's a great college. It's our college. It's not a state college. It's nothing else. It's our county college. And I think we have the reasons to really take pride in it and support it the way it should be supported, at least at the level closest to the lowest level that other counties support their college. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. White. Susie, would you like to address the TAC? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There you go.
Couldn't find it all of a sudden. Yeah, thank you for having us all here. I know some of you have heard our song and dance here, but anyway, we just wanted to be really appreciative for you listening to us. So I'm the co-chair along with Mandy Metzger of the Political Action Committee. We're called Supporters for a Thriving CCC. And our main job is to get people to vote and to vote yes. And in that, it's also fundraising to pay a company that we hired to help us pass this. Because it's expected to be a low turnout election, we are really focusing on people who have voted yes for education in the past. So you're not going to see a lot of any campaign signs. It's mostly through social media, emails, and getting out to groups like this. So we're mainly asking you to vote yes on May 17th and tell all your friends, make sure they do too. You can endorse. Our website is for the Political Action Committee is called yesforcoconino.com. And so you can go and endorse on that, or you can email me. I think most of you do have my email. And we're also asking for funding. For our major funding for the committee, we're mainly approaching the businesses that are likely to benefit from the passage of this. So we're going to construction, healthcare, automotive, all those other ones where you saw on the list that Colleen read through. And they are being very supportive of us. So we're really appreciative of the community and the support we've gotten so far. So that's my spiel. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Cheyenne, Dr. Smith, Dr. White, and Susie. Appreciate the presentation. Does anybody from the TAC have questions for anyone here? I'm not seeing any. So at this point, we'll say thank you very much and wish you very good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, that would be me. I have a presentation for you all for regarding the regional transportation plan. So knowing that we're on a time schedule here, I will go ahead and share my screen. And get to the up here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good morning again. David Wessel, Planning Manager with Metro Plan, talking to you about our regional transportation plan, Stride Forward. Stride Forward is our 20 to 25 year plan. We're projecting out to 2045, where we want to develop and deliver transportation strategies and projects with clear cost implications and clarify relationships between economic development and environmental objectives. And this is particularly important in light of the carbon neutrality plan. And I'll speak about that a little bit more. We know there's lots of plans going on, including Mountain Lions Flagstaff in Motion. We want to be respectful of those, as well as provide a strong lead in and educational support, if you will, or informational support to the regional plan that the city and county do and are kicking off. You see the map to the right, that's our boundaries. It's the same as Mountain Lion, the same as the regional plan. And then we intend and hope that we're providing a robust public participation effort. And that's really going to be my focus today. Through Stride Forward, we want to tackle several big issues, climate change being one of the most. 40% of greenhouse gas emissions in this region come from transportation, cars and trucks. And so that's very core to what we do. But we also know that transportation can play a role in other issues like housing affordability, whether that's enabling people to get rid of a car or that second car because other modes are useful and practical, or supporting having transportation support the development of other types of perhaps more affordable housing like multifamily housing. You've seen in Flagstaff in Motion presentations by Busy Collins, their equity index. We'll be doing something similar. This is a very busy map. It's basically showing the intersection geographically of populations that may have accessibility risk issues, minority, poverty, disabled. And we're going to evaluate their access to basic services like pharmacies, groceries, parks, recreation, by the different modes via the networks available to them, and make sure that their access is equitable to that of the broader region. To do this, we're going to be looking at two future conditions where we project the population to be about 120,000 for the region. This is based on state demographer information, and about 65,000 jobs, so similar proportions to what we have today. The first of these is the onward condition, where it's staying the course with existing transportation and land use plans. So back in 2018, voters approved two propositions, one for roads, bikes, and pedestrian projects, and the other for the Lone Tree Overpass. A third proposition, Proposition 421 for transit, was narrowly defeated. So we're going to look at that fiscal condition and project that forward over the next 20 years and see how that works. We're also going to take the current land use plan, which is Flagstaff Place Matters 2030, assume that and see how the two work together. and then evaluate that in light of many of these issues, including carbon neutrality, which seeks to hold vehicle miles traveled. You know, when I commute in, it's 10 miles, it's one person, 10 miles, 10 vehicle miles traveled. They want to hold that number constant for the community at 2019 levels. So how would we do in this scenario? We don't expect Onward to meet those goals, but it will give us a sense of how far off the mark we might be. So we do want to, as I said, inform decision makers, policymakers, the public about what it will take. And there's some ideas or goals or targets set in the carbon neutrality plan, and we really want to put those into practical application. And how do you achieve those? We'll do that through the upward scenario. We'll reach for these ambitious goals. We'll modify those voter approved projects to make them as sustainable as possible in a very aggressive way. We'll look hard at land use plans. We know that increasing density and moving things closer together and providing a better mix can shorten vehicle trips, but also make walking, biking, and transit more functional. We will not be fiscally constrained, but we will try to do our best to put a price tag on what this will take. And as I said, we're not in the business of setting policy, but we can advise on policy. So in order to help us meet carbon neutrality goals, we have a literature review of North American practices that help reduce those vehicle miles of travel. And that's really a good proxy for the emissions that will occur. And you can see the most effective means on the far left here: transit-oriented development, that's TOD, density, priced parking, and street connectivity are key. But you'll see as things drop down, transit still plays a role in many of these. You see van pool, increased bus frequency, bus pass subsidies, and bike and ped improvements, which are key connections to transit. So these are the suite of things that we'll be looking to bring to bear on the issue. As I mentioned today, I really want to talk to you about public outreach. We haven't really done a lot of analyses yet, but we are technical analyses, but we have done quite a bit of outreach, and you can see some listed here. And what I want you to get out of today is the types of questions that we're asking and how we're going to be using them. I'm going to be going fast. I don't expect you to digest the results of these surveys, but do your best, and you're welcome to visit our website to learn more. So our random sample survey, one of the things we looked at was a number of features about the community and how they were valued. And the ones that we asked about were all very valued highly, with transportation being at the lower end of that. And we see transportation really as a means to an end, and many of these other things being the ends that transportation serves. So this can inform us about how to communicate about transportation. We know that community shape has a big impact. So we asked a question that we saw in a national survey about people's preference for living in smaller homes, closer together near shopping and restaurants, or larger homes where driving is required. It was about a 60-40 split in favor of larger homes at the national level. But you can see in Flagstaff, we're at about 50-50. So, that's encouraging. And you'll see some of these things say combined Flagstaff. We do have these broken out by, the city and the county and other demographic measures. We asked people how they traveled today and how they would prefer to travel in the future. And you can see about 80% travel by car, but in the future, about 60% would want to travel by car and shift into walking, biking, and you see a fourfold increase in public transit. This is encouraging, but we understand it's aspirational, but we can start that, as we look at our modeling of future conditions, is this kind of thing going far enough to reach some of our goals? So again, that's how we'll use it. How are people using cars? You can see here, it's largely driving to work, grocery shopping, running errands were the larger ones. And, how can we shape land use? How can we improve other networks to support these purposes. We asked people, what their primary, not necessarily the preferred, but their primary transportation mode, and then asked each of those categories, what was they valued about it. And you can see for driving, saving time, safety, and necessity were the strongest. For bicycling and walking, we see that it's actually enjoyable, along with being environmental friendly, focusing on health. And then you can see where transit is kind of a nice hybrid between the other modes. We asked people if they'd be willing to switch to a different mode, and you can see a majority of people are willing, particularly inside of Flagstaff. And then you can see how that splits out. And again, this may help with messaging and education. We asked a question that was asked on a city survey earlier about the satisfaction or it's more like the utility of the transportation system. It's made up of trails and sidewalks and bike lanes and transit service and roads, and how well is it meeting their needs? And about 80% are saying it does, but it is troubling that 9% says it doesn't meet it at all. And so again, some of our cross tabulations against different groups can help us understand where we're failing people on that. We asked people about their priorities for investment. A pretty good balance, not a big gap between the bus at one end and roads at the other. So again, encouraging in terms of where we should perhaps be putting our money. And we know that carbon neutrality is important and urgent. It's a 2030 goal. And we wanted to gauge where people stand on climate change. And you can see 20% think it's happening with little can be done, but 70%, almost 80%, think it's happening and needs to be addressed. So that's over 90% that really see it as happening. So as a responding to something that people are aware of is useful. So that was our random sample survey. We went into an online survey. Again, we had about 600 people. It skews a little more towards people who use bikes, people who are perhaps a little more well-off financially, but a fairly good cross-section. And we dug a little bit deeper. This is not all of the questions we asked, but how satisfied were you with different aspects of the transportation system? And you can see on the left side, we asked about the frequency and proximity of transit service. I think it's notable that about 28% of people don't know the frequency of the transit service or don't know the proximity of the transit service to them. So there's maybe some opportunity there. And you can see a rough balance on satisfaction versus dissatisfaction across the population. When it comes to sidewalks and bike lanes and trails, we see maybe a higher level of dissatisfaction. This kind of tells us where we might need to be shifting some of our priorities to bring things into balance. And again, there was other questions that we asked. We wanted to understand about the necessity of driving and what people factored into that. Distance, things were just too far. We had multiple packages, multiple stops. So again, as we imagine a different future, can we address these issues through other transportation means or different land use patterns? Similarly, we asked, why would you perceive driving to be a safer mode? Fear of a bike crash was the highest. Concerns about the weather was the second highest. Not quite sure what we can do to mitigate about the weather, but there are things maybe through operations and maintenance, education that could happen. An interesting point here, you can see risk of assault while walking or biking was the way the question was framed. Relatively low at 15%, but the very low income, people below 25%, those that responded, 40% said risk of assault was of concern. So as we understand the various aspects of our community and the various people there, we need to have a transportation that serves everyone, transportation system. We asked people if they'd be willing to change their community type. We really can't ask our future residents So we do our best through asking the people who are here if they change from, to this community that has it's smaller, closer together, more dense, more mixed use. And you can see about 53% said yes, 23% said maybe. And, just kind of illustrative of some of the cross tabulations we did for these different groups. You can see, not surprisingly, people in the county, many of whom choose a rural lifestyle, are a little less predisposed to considering that kind of change. We asked further about different aspects of what would influence their decision to move. Those who said yes or maybe. And you can see here in this top chart, when we started considering 5- and 6-story buildings with first floor retail, very strong disagreement, or being less likely to choose that. It got better for 3 and 4 stories, and it was somewhat neutral when we got down to 2 stories or townhouses and quad fourplexes. This is again just kind of an illustration of the different cross tabulations that we asked. And then we asked people about, our parks and well-landscaped streets or in availability of transit. I would make you more likely to choose. And you can see a fairly strong predisposition for both of those things to influence that, and particularly along the low and moderate income and the low income. So similarly, we dug deeper into people's willingness to switch modes, fairly strong, similar to what we saw before in the random sample survey, people willing to do that, and what would motivate them, and some of the things that we see that would be motivating. Can we get better bike lanes? Can we educate people about the impacts on health and the environment? Provide better bike facilities, bring things closer together, provide transit. It was interesting. We asked, hey, if e-bikes were available, would that be motivating? It was less than a majority for all, but when we look at the minority groups and low and moderate income, maybe e-bikes are a solution. So again, something to think about. So then we went into survey number 2. Again, about 600 people participated. We really wanted to dive a little bit deeper, asked some of the same questions, maybe a little bit different. If everything were equally safe and convenient, which would you prefer? We see bicycling really rising to the top. So, if we can make bicycling more practical, will we see the kind of mode shift we would need? And do we feel that transit, the network sufficiently supports walking, biking, and transit? And the majority say no, they don't. So again, maybe there's some direction there to follow. We had an opportunity, unfortunately, to get what's called a revealed preference as opposed to a aspirational or stated preference. Gas prices are up. How does that change your behavior? And we see a lot of people combining errands, going out less, using other modes more. So again, understanding this, how can we design and serve our community to facilitate that in a way that doesn't increase VMT or increase emissions? We asked, here was a trade-off question, one that was asked during the Milton Corridor Master Plan. We asked again, perhaps not as eloquently, but we know that it takes 7 minutes to drive Milton Road. And so if we were to improve conditions for walking and biking, would you be willing to take longer, and how much more? And what's really kind of surprising here is almost 80% of people are willing to take a minute or more. And kind of FYI, the analysis actually said it would take a minute or less longer for those things. So we see a willingness on the part of people to sacrifice, if you will, their time for the benefit of others. And interestingly, we looked at crosstabs for just people who, their primary mode was driving. We didn't see a large drop off in the people saying, greater than 3 minutes. So pretty telling there. Probably should have listened to Busy and how we asked this question, but try to keep it concise, and maybe it's not as informative as we like, but we have been hearing a lot in our survey comments and from our stakeholders. Can we get service out to outlying areas? And I know Mountain Line hears this a lot too. So we asked, how much would you be willing to pay? And, about 38%, 37% said nothing. And that held whether you were city or a county resident. But that means that, about 60% are willing to pay something. And with a plurality of those looking to pay about $50. And these figures were based roughly on some numbers that Mountain Line provided us in terms of what it would cost to serve an outlying area divided by the number of households there. So need to dig deeper into this, but it does look like there is support for funding, including perhaps some funding from city residents to see service to those areas. We dug a little bit deeper into attitudes about multifamily housing. Here was one about asking whether they thought 2 to 3 stories apartments or triplexes could fit into their neighborhood. And about 42%, said, yeah, they could. You throw in the neutral and we're topping 50%. So, how we go about that and how we communicate that is going to be important in terms of the scenarios that we lay out. And we asked several other questions, but again, this is to inform us of how we might shape and communicate these future conditions to the public and policymakers, and then evaluate those. Are we, if people are generally amenable to 2 and 3 story buildings, are we doing most of our development in that vein? Or are we really pushing those limits into the, what people are less supportive of? So here we are in April. We're really diving into the analysis of the base 2019 conditions and that first onward scenario that will be out to the public again, hopefully in late April or early May with results of that. And we'll come back around to our stakeholders to discuss that. We hope to wrap up in October with adoption in November and December. So that is my presentation. Again, it's kind of what we're asking, what we're seeking, and what we're going to use that information for. And here is our website where you're able to actually get reports on the random sample survey and the first online survey. You can see the results, but we don't really have a report showing all of the cross tabulations on that second survey, but that'll be forthcoming. So thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate it. And we'll stop there. And I guess I'll put on my other hat and go back to being chair. Are there any questions for our presenter? I'm not seeing any, so thank you for your time, and we will go back to our regular agenda. If I can get all that going.
Dave, I think Gail Jackson has a question. You probably can't see her there. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yes, Gail.
Hi, Dave.
Good
I'm
morning.
just curious if this presentation can be shared. There was a lot of data that was in there, and I'm just curious if that's something you can send out to the group.
Yes, I'll convert that to a PDF, and I'll share it with Rhonda to pass along. But thank you for asking.
And one other question, how is this going to be used moving forward, this information? It looks like you got 600 respondents, which is good, but less than 1%, right, of the total Flagstaff population. I'm curious, how are we going to use this information moving forward?
No, that's a fair question. And from a survey perspective, if you can hit around 400, you've got a pretty decent sample size. Granted, this is not a random sample, but it is a fairly large number. And we do have our demographics information where we can compare it to both census data and our random sample surveys to see if we're in line or how we skew. So we will use some judgment in terms of how we evaluate these. What we're going to use this for is, as I mentioned, when we shape particularly that upward scenario, we'll take what we've learned into consideration in terms of how we present density and shape density, and then how we evaluate that relative to what we've heard from the public. The public, you saw the dissatisfaction, say, with the 5 and 6 story buildings. And if we're, our goal with the upward is to say, this is what it takes to reach carbon neutrality. And if it means we needed to pack in a lot of 5 and 6 story buildings to get the density that allows for all the shorter trips and other things, well, then we can report on, here's a lot of 5 and 6 story buildings, and here's the public's perception of those. And so it's kind of an evaluation tool as well, but it also tells us to, hey, let's start with, some of these lower profile efforts and see if that meets our objectives. So that's how we'll use the data, and it's also in terms of perhaps, again, educating and evaluating. People said, hey, I need my car to go grocery shopping. It's like, well, through this scenario, we put grocery shopping within, a 5-minute walk. So, does that resolve that issue? So those are some of the kind of things that we'll be using the information for. Any other questions?
Look forward to receiving the data.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Rhonda, do we have any other questions?
I do not see any others.
Okay, well, let's move on to item 7 on the agenda, reviewing of the draft board business agenda. The first thing is the consent agenda. We typically don't discuss that, but does anybody have any pressing questions where they'd want to pull that? Okay, so the coordinated plan is on that consent agenda. We'll move on to the capital budget. And that's Josh Stone, I believe, Management Services Director.
Hey. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Transit Advisory Committee members. Today, we're going to take a look at our fiscal year 2023 capital portion of our budget. 2023 is looking to be an exciting year with several of our capital investment projects moving into their final design and construction phases. I think we're fairly confident in saying everyone can look forward to seeing shovels in the ground soon. So the budget certainly reflects that. With that said, the capital budget comes in at $55 million. I've provided the fiscal year 2022 budget and where we expect to end up for the current year with all of the projects. About half of the 55 million was already approved and budgeted for the current fiscal year, which is 2022, and will be carried over. Of course, the largest piece of the budget is our Downtown Connection Center project. It's about 66% of the overall budget. Happy to see the pieces coming together for that. I did want to note that the very top line is bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. You'll see that there's no expense for this in fiscal year 2022. City Council just this week approved an IGA for this to move forward in 2023. Mountain Line received the grant funding for this project and will be administering it, but the project outcomes will result in a capital asset for the city. So it's on our budget, but it will ultimately be the city that will be part of that. Other than that, I did not plan to speak extensively about any of the specific projects. I think you're probably familiar with most of them, as Kate and the entire planning team regularly provide updates for various projects. At the May meeting, we'll be discussing funding of the entire budget, including capital. If anyone has any questions about specific lines or projects, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions for Josh? Not seeing any, so thank you, Josh, and good luck to you and the NAPTA team. That's a lot to deliver in 2023, and it's exciting stuff, so glad to see it. All right, let's move on to our next item, Casper Master Plan update with Ann Dono, our Capital Project Manager. Ms. Dono.
Thank you, Chair Dave, members of the TAC. I'd like to, Ann Dono, Capital Project Manager. I'd like to provide a little update on our Casper Master Plan. We are not seeking a specific, we don't have a specific recommendation, but just seeking feedback from the TAC and board. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So a little background, the Casper Master Plan project, the goal is to as we're looking ahead at growth in transit services over the long term, we're looking at maximizing our facility use here at Casper, the 3 properties that Mountain Line owns, the 2 developed, and then we're looking at the vacant land to the north. The whole purpose of the project is to squeeze out what we can for fleet storage and maintenance at this location. When the DCC is online, fingers crossed by roughly June of 2024, the majority of the administration is would relocate to that facility. And so that creates some capacity here at Casper. And so this effort is kind of looking at that, that transfer movement of staff and then how the space could be repurposed over the long term. So we had to put on our crystal ball and look ahead about 20 years. This is a 20-year master plan. We had some assumptions built in. We assumed doubling our service hours to 150,000 per year. We go from 29 buses currently up to 52 buses long term. Also attempted to kind of estimate facility growth in our bus stop network up to 250 bus stops. And then also the staffing. Currently there's 83.5 FTEs that are operations, fleet, and facilities, and then IT currently, but then long-term we'd be closer to 150, 147 staff. So next slide, please. So HDR is supporting us on this project. They developed several concepts and staff met last week and reviewed several concepts and came forward with really looking at concept A as really meeting our long-term programming needs. Concept A actually shows 2 key phases. You'll see phase 1 is kind of where right next to the current administrative building, we call it Shop 0, that would be demoed, and then Shop 2 would eventually demo the administration portion of that facility. Next slide. So concept A, phase 1, one of the primary needs that we've identified is our maintenance facility is undersized. We only have 2 bus bays over in Shop 1 down in that lower left corner of the little orange square. And we're currently serving our entire fleet out of that, and our buses hang out of the front, are articulated. It's not large enough. It's a back-end facility. So we are looking at developing a true fleet maintenance facility that works with our not only our current fleet, but we would be built for the long term. We had a great city public works tour in December and got to see their facilities off of West Route 66 and had some great ideas from that. So really looking to develop bays that have great lighting. It would have a much higher ceiling. There'll be a mezzanine layer. Lots of great storage, just a really great working environment for the fleet maintenance group. So that first key phase is demoing Shop Zero and then developing a 6-bay facility with a chassis wash. And then you'll see the circulation starts to change with the employee and just general circulation on site. Next slide is also phase 1. Thanks, Rhonda. In phase 1, we would also, the second floor would be a mezzanine layer that would host some storage and some of the mechanical equipment related to the facility. So the maintenance bays themselves, it's actually about a 25-foot tall building. I'll show you later, there's a good cross section. So there would be a mezzanine layer. And then next slide, please, Rhonda. And then as part of phase 1, it would disrupt some of the employee parking that you see that we currently have with the circulation. So we would be looking at developing a kind of we'll call it it's actually technically a 3rd story, but over the top of the maintenance, there would be employee parking. There would be a ramp developed off of Caspar for access. And we could look at phasing this, either developing the parking as a second component to phase 2. There could be some strategies there. But regardless, the building itself needs to be, from a structural standpoint, our understanding is it needs to be designed anyway to have the layer to support the level of a parking garage, so that some of those costs would kind of be absorbed into the fact that the type of the maintenance bay building would need to be designed. So next slide, Rhonda. So phase 2, which would demo essentially the administration portion of the building, actually HTR was able to successfully show a bus storage facility that would hold 27 buses. We were very pleasantly surprised. It does essentially sort of tie on to the maintenance facility, has a really elegant kind of single circulation around the building. And there would also be, on the next slide, Rhonda, thank you, right over the bus storage, there would be kind of call it a 2nd floor, but essentially some office type facilities over the storage that would help with operations staff that need that kind of an office environment. And the next slide, Rhonda. Rhonda, I don't know if you can go to the next slide.
Oh, I thought I said it already.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, can you go back one? I think I might have. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned too, with this second, 3rd story with the offices, there's also added parking onto the other end of the phase 1 employee parking. Again, this is all very long-term, looking out 20 years timeline. So depending on the needs of the parking, those things could be triggered. Now, can you go back to the next? Yeah. Thank you. So this is a little bit of a cross section, essentially from a Lego kind of side view. You can kind of see the blue is the 1st phase maintenance bay with the employee 1st phase parking over, and then the bus storage with the additional parking, and then also kind of the employee office space over that, all into that essentially one large rectangular facility. And then that is really concept A that would complete our long-term bus storage and maintenance needs, maximizing obviously every square foot on that property. And let me go to the next slide, Rhonda. So we also looked, as part of the master plan, we looked at the vacant land that Mountain Line has purchased in 2017. We did get some feedback and from the city. We did look at this, developing the parcel as part of a, well, what if we put bus storage and maintenance on the vacant land or some transit use over here? And they developed this concept based on some information we did get high level from the city about what would need to happen with this property. The vacant land is zoned high density residential, and it would be required to be rezoned to highway commercial, which is our current zoning on our developed parcels. And of course, would need a CUP associated with that as well. The other component of developing the vacant land is that Linda Vista, because of the rezoning, it would trigger the requirement that Linda Vista would need to be constructed either as part of that development, but would need to tie on both ends from Caspar to Linda Vista due to the rezoning. So we took some feedback about resource protection, setbacks, and HDR developed this concept showing essentially bus storage developed sort of subsurface. If you can kind of see there's a tunnel that would go from our current facility near Shop 3, would go underneath the future Linda Vista, and there would be kind of a subsurface structure in phase. Essentially, it would be developed, could be developed as one phase. We're calling it phase 2. And if you go to the next slide, Rhonda. Over the bus storage, closer to more of sort of ground level, if you will, you could develop either parking and a green roof and, additional facility use. And this kind of layout just kind of shows the developable area that, at least initially, that we're seeing based on slopes and some other constraints on the property in terms of just zoning requirements. So one of the conversations Mountain Line staff had during the workshop was, well, this could be an opportunity to kind of relook at the parcel from a P3 housing opportunity perspective that, we didn't go into any great discussion during our workshop, but wanted to kind of put that out there for the TAC and board to hear some feedback. The other, options, of course, is if the recommendation would be to have Mountain Line dispose of the property. It is zoned high density residential, and it is a well-located parcel. And if someone were to develop it, it would not need rezoning, and it would just be development by right. So the other conversation we had related to the parcel, just from probably a strategic planning aspect, is we could do a lot line revision. Sort of down in the corner of the slide, you can kind of see the blue line. The current parcel kind of, Linda Vista kind of crisscrosses 2 of our parcels. So we would, propose just at least doing a lot line revision so that whether we use the parcel or it's disposed of, it would have access onto Caspar directly. Whereas right now it's sort of landlocked, if you will, from Caspar if it would be 2 different owners. So I would love to pause here before I kind of wind up with my last. Any questions so far?
Any questions or comments for Ann Dunno? I'll just say NAPTA or Mountain Line is a really valuable asset, and it's great to see you looking ahead to assure that you'll continue to be an asset to the community. So I understand you have a couple more slides or some more to wrap up here.
Just a couple more slides.
And I have a quick question.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Are you guys leaning? Is there one way or the other? Are you looking? Is NAPTA looking for a partner to do housing, or are you leaning towards releasing the property? Help me better understand the direction you're looking to go with that.
Thank you for the question. So it actually does lead to my next slide. So
gotcha.
A little bit of a comparison.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, really our takeaways in our workshop was that, concept A, just overall, kind of checks all the boxes for the needs, the long-term needs. It appears to be great for our circulation. It is, obviously it would be a CUP, but not a rezoning. There are some technical challenges to even concept A, which, the drainage and parking, I'm sure will prove to be, some good challenges for engineering and kind of getting through CUP kind of review, but definitely looked really doable. When we look at concept C, at least as tied for transit use with the tunnel and, like I showed in the prior slides, and we're looking at that, and from an operational standpoint, it's a little weaker because it does separate our facilities, right? We would have facilities up to the north, and it is a distance, to walk down and staff walking back and forth. And, the great value of concept A is everything's real tight. Fleet maintenance and facilities are all together. It's just more efficient from a daily use, from a staff standpoint. And then, of course, with concept C, you'd have a public road in the future, at least, that would bisect the property. And so some of those are the challenges. Obviously, the technical aspects of the tunnel and the utilities equates to costs, risk and cost that are, at this point, from what we can tell, would be more than concept A. I am in the process of getting some, in the next couple of weeks, I should be getting some very high level cost estimates for these concepts. But, in the conversation, we did look at that and say, would the board want us to further explore a P3? So that's really as much as far as we left it. Yeah.
So this is Dave, just the warning against the use of acronyms, public-private partnership,
Okay.
for those who may not be familiar. And so in light of Gail's question, under concept A, if that's the preferred scenario, then the release of that property to the north, or the sale of that property to the north is perhaps more likely because it's not part of the long-term vision. Is that correct?
Well, I would say we haven't gotten to a formal recommendation. I mean, I think we're in this exploration process. And I'm sorry, I'm just seeing that Heather's hand is up. So.
Yeah, so I'd like to take a run at getting very specific to Gail's question. The answer is we don't know. I can't say that we're leaning towards the public-private partnership or towards releasing the property. I think the analysis was helping us to identify, is it even feasible and what are those challenges if we look at doing it? Ultimately, we have to have this discussion with our board of directors. Several years ago, when we purchased the property, it was very clear from the board that any recommended use of that property and or sale of that property would be a board action and decision. And so I think the next steps are to finish up some of this concept planning to come up with a clear recommendation to the board about how we might be able to use that property. And then if we don't see it as technically feasible, then we would then be asking the board, what do they want to do next with that vacant parcel? I know one of the things we talked about in our concept planning is the sale of that property could be key in making the match that we need for the improvements of concept A. So those are all the different pieces that we will still need to walk through with the board of directors. And of course, the Transit Advisory Committee will have an opportunity to give us some of that feedback as well.
Excellent, thank you. Any further questions for either Ann or Heather? I'm not seeing any hands go up, so thank you. That's again exciting stuff. Always big things percolating there at Mountain Line. Let's go to the next big thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like we got one more slide.
That's okay. I think Heather answered that very well for me. So yes, refining concepts, coming back to the board with further getting their direction on what they would like us to do with the P3 exploration, and also consider the lot line modification.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, our next item is regarding the Mountain Line Go airport service to the airport with a micro transit. So we have Marketing and Communications Director, Jackie Lenners.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Wessel and members of the TAC. I will be fairly brief here. Discussing our Mountain Line Go airport microtransit service. We're talking about marketing today. I really do want to give a nod to Estella Hollander, our mobility planner, who really is the project manager for all of our microtransit projects that we're doing and this grant that we have. And I get to present today on the marketing, but Estella is really the one behind a lot of this. So I think we've presented before. I won't go into all the details, but we have a grant to do these micro transit pilots. We recently in March added the airport as one of our destinations. So you can travel using micro transit from anywhere within the Flagstaff city limits to and from Flagstaff Pulliam Airport for $2 as part of this program. So unlike the Huntington Corridor, which is what the original microtransit program was, this really required a more comprehensive traditional marketing campaign. The work we do in the Huntington Corridor really relied on outreach to the human service agencies in that corridor, which has gone really well. But this one required more of a traditional marketing campaign. Next slide, please. So our marketing agency worked closely with the Discover Flagstaff marketing team, who do absolutely incredible work, and they do everything for tourism and the airport. So work together to create some the look and feel of this campaign. We've done a kind of a mix of more traditional advertising like the Daily Sun and Flagstaff Business News, and then some kind of new tactics. The Discover Flagstaff folks actually introduced us to a new company that they work with that delivers mobile ads based on your behavior. So we all know that our phones know what we're doing and we're thinking and where we've been. So if you have traveled to or from the Flagstaff airport, you may have been targeted with one of our online ads. So that's been a new one for us, and we're really excited to try it out. Next slide, please. We also created a flyer for the Northern Arizona Lodging, Tourism and Restaurant Association. I think they rebranded their name. I think it's NALTRA. And so Ali Applin's the new CEO of that organization, and shared this with all of their members. So obviously getting it out to our tourism industry is huge, and the hotels there. So created this for them. Next slide, please. And then huge thanks to Discover Flagstaff and the Economic Vitality team for hanging this banner in the airport. So if you've flown in or out of Pulliam, you may have seen this. And they've also done a lot of education with the vendors that they have in the airport, like the car rental folks and people like that. We've heard through the app that a lot of people have heard about Mountain Line Go from someone at the airport, someone who works at the airport, which is great. Next slide, please. I'm actually going to give Gail Jackson a break here. Rhonda, I'm not going to play it because of our time. There is a link in the staff report. Huge thank you to Gail Jackson for starring in our video. And it's received a lot of views. So we really appreciate her for doing that. Next slide, please.
When Econa CEO Gail.
See if I can get it to go.
Sorry, Rhonda. So just a few results that we have so far. So Datafy is the company that we're partnering with for those mobile ads. We've seen some really good results so far with them, looking at really high click-through rates. We're always looking for benchmarks that really can attribute something to our advertising. And so it seems like a low number, but it's really cool to see that people who actually saw the ad showed up at the airport. So like to see that, and then we will update these numbers when we present to the board. Next slide, please. And we will also update these when we present to the board. These are the March, this is the March ridership so far. So looking at the app downloads, we had a huge bump. The Daily Sun did a great article about the program, and we had a huge bump on the day that article appeared. Bookings from the app, 70% is huge. That means that someone in our office is not having to answer the phone and manually put in the trip. People are doing it on their own, which is great. And we're seeing, the ridership start off slowly but surely. It is one of those things where we wanted to be successful, but not too successful, just based on, our staffing and things like that. So we've been really happy so far, and it's been really well received. If you go to the next slide, there's a couple of comments from some of our riders on there. Some people who arrived at the airport when it was snowing and there were no ride shares available. They had no other choice. They actually heard about it from one of the car rental companies. And so really people have been, very happy with the service, and it's been a nice thing to add. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions, and I do encourage you to go watch the video. Like I said, it's linked in the staff report, and you can see our very own Gail Jackson and her family star in the video.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. Questions for Jackie regarding the new service to the airport? Looks like a great job, and hopefully that app is picking up and becoming more broadly used across town. So thank you for that update, Jackie. Our next presentation, should I be able to get back to the agenda here, is Art at the Downtown Connections Center. Kate Morley, Deputy General Manager. Kate.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just do a quick introduction. As most of you know, the city has graciously brought forward funding to include art as a part of the Downtown Connection Center. And we have Jana Weldon with the city here to present to us on some concepts.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next. Yeah, so as Kate said, that this is all the art is being funded by BBB taxes from the city of Flagstaff. This is my contact information. I have asked, I think, Rhonda to send out a comment sheet for 2 of the projects that I'm going to show you. And if you want to, please fill it out and send them back to me after the meeting. Next. So just so you know, we have artists on board. They've been working for a little over a year now. Laura Haddad and Tom Drugan. We've had a lot of public process. I'm not going to go into all that now, and I know time. So some of the site inspirations they did on a site visit last May was obviously they're going to draw from your mountain lion and your mountain lion logo. Next. They drew inspiration from the San Francisco peaks. Next. They drew inspiration from the ponderosa pine trees and the logging history, especially the history of the Black lumberjacks. Next. Also, from the kind of observatories that are around Flagstaff, both from the First Nations observatories and solar alignments, as well as current telescopes and sightings from Lowell. Next. And then the Southside community itself. And we have been to the Southside Community Association. We held a Southside exclusive conversation. We have also been with the Southside stakeholders group through Mountain Line. Next. So there's 5 different art projects that are being proposed. And like I said, today we're going to focus on 2. If you see over at the building glass, you see a little horseshoe kind of shaped symbol. That's the building facade art, glass art, and we'll be focusing on that today. We'll also briefly touch on the crosswalk mural. We're just going to briefly touch on that. Then there's a civic sculpture that we're going to go into more in detail today. We're going to call it the Southside Grove sculpture. There's also other projects at the Rio Bridge historic panels and some bus bay rotating art. And those latter 2 I'll only touch upon today. Next. So I'll just go into the 3 that we're just going to briefly touch upon today. There is a project that is proposed for local artists and writers to create historic panels and plaques for the top of the Route 66 bridge that's just recently been redone. This is actually being funded through historic preservation. It's something that the Army Corps of Engineers is actually funding because they owe some money back for some cultural things that they're removing. Next. The artists have also proposed art sidewalks. This is a maybe project because it requires the buy-in of the risk management and traffic departments of the city. That is a process that has been initiated with conversation, but it has not yet formed a go-ahead. There are issues with federal guidance, guidelines in the being uniform across the nation that the city needs to take under consideration before giving a go-ahead on this. Next. Also, this is more farther out, kind of in phase 2 or 3. Once the bus shelters are designed, the artists are proposing again for local artists, kind of rotating art within a bus shelter, but that again will wait until those bus shelters are designed. So we're not going to go too much into that. Next. But the building facade glass art, as you know, for the Downtown Connection Center in phase 1, the building is going to be the first thing that's constructed. So one of the major projects that the artists are focusing on is art glass for the facade. Right now they're focused on this area over the entrance. Once they start working with the building architect and get into all the feasibility, it's possible that the location might change as the building design changes. I don't think there's major changes, but there may be some changes in where the glass is. So obviously that will affect the project. But this image you see in the upper right is the image that they are going to be working with. And it is an overlay of the 3 elements found in the mountain lion logo. Next. So this gives you a little bit of a feel of where the architect design is to date. And again, we know once the architect of hire is on board, some of this, there may be some alterations to this. But you can kind of see that the artists were working with colors that would work well within what the architect is proposing. If that changes, it's possible that these colors may be tweaked as well. Next. So what you really need to understand is that this is an overlay of 3 images and each is in a different color. And the reason is that this will have a different look in the day than it will at night. So the ponderosa pines are in the red, the peaks are in the green, and the mountain lion is in blue. Next. And then when you put colored light behind it, a different image comes out. So if you put a green light behind the red trees, they appear black. And so by changing through a very kind of slow process, the light behind it at night, the different image will come forward. So if there's a red light there, the mountain lion will come forward. And then, if there's a green light, then black trees, and a blue light, so we each have these different lights that brings a different image forward. And it would kind of be not a Vegas style, flashy thing of a change. It'd be like a nice gradual kind of, 10, 30-second change of light behind it. And so then that image would morph. Next. And yes, we are aware of the dark skies and we will be working with that. So basically the artists have actually started their studies. They took a grid. They want to make the little pixels, not squares though, but circles, to kind of work in with some of the imagery that they're using for the plaza. And, also the stack log reference. Next. And they've taken this section and they've made up a model of it. Next. To make sure that what they want to achieve works. So they silk screened, so they, totally there's going to be 43,000 pixels that they're going to have to individually color. But they took this one section and they sent it off in a silk screen sample that they got back from Germany. Next. And, you know, so this is kind of just it comes in this kind of translucent inner layer that goes in between the glass units so that it's insulated on the inside. Next. And then they did studies with lights. So they took their samples, made sure that they were going to be able to achieve the effect that they desired with this concept. And the red coloration they use is the one that didn't come through as strongly as they want. So they're working with some different colors of red light. It's actually going to probably end up having to be a little bit more pink. That was the only one that with their example that they were a little bit dissatisfied with, but they do believe that, you know, they've done enough studies that they feel confident that this is going to work. Next. So that's the art pane glass. The next up is the Southside Grove, and this is a sculpture. Next. And it's an immersive experience, and it's going to have a lot of Southside history in it. So the essential sculpture is 6 inspired trunks, and they're made of Corten, the weathering steel, with some tips that are in stainless steel. 5 of the trunks have branches, and the largest trunk is more kind of like a real guidepost. They're also in the form actually of a telescope. So if you kind of look at it, it's got these kind of different layers. So the trees are also telescopes, and the whole thing does function as a kind of a solar observatory on the equinoxes. Next. So the sculpture forms, again, 5 of the 6 are like trees. All the branches go outwards, so that inward, and I think you saw in the last, and we'll go into it more detail, there's a table in the middle. So we want it to be kind of a clearing in the forest in the middle to have this kind of immersive experience. Next. And the alignment of each of the telescope trees is on, you know, a solstice or an equinox. So it is a mini observatory in and of itself. Next. Go ahead, next. This is just showing some of the dimensions. So during the equinoxes, basically the large, if you look at the image on the left, you can see that there's a portal in the large telescope, which does not have the branches. So it kind of is a telescope all by itself. So light will come through that portal, and during the equinoxes, it will strike, it'll put a disc of light right in the center of the table at noon. Next. There is going to be on the trees, the 5 trees, not on the larger telescope, a bark texture option. And the artists are looking at different ways to create that bark texture, whether it is a cut pattern in a perforated metal or whether it's actually etched into the Corten steel. And that's going to be driven by, you know, obviously how it looks and in maintenance concerns. Next. So the bark texture will go on actually 5 trunks. I know it says 6, but it's 5. The telescope will be smooth. Next. Also, they're not glass, but out of polycarbonate rods. They are going to add kind of twinkling star needles onto the branches, so that when you look up, it'll have a little kind of dazzling light. Next. And so here's a view in their, you know, rendition of the branches with the needles. And they're kind of, like I said, like little stars. And then here's it showing, oops, go ahead next. I was ready to move. Thank you, Rhonda. With both the bark texture and the needle clusters. Now we'll go on to this center table next. So in the center of our little observatory and our forest clearing is this 5-foot dark granite timetable. And it's going to be etched like tree lines, like tree rings, excuse me. And these rings will contain Southside Flagstaff and state and Arizona history, but it will be focusing primarily on Southside history. Next. So this will kind of give you an idea of kind of how the lines will be, etched into this black granite, and how it will both, be kind of like tree rings, and then it'll have all these, little historical facts going around. Next. And here's kind of a sample. Again, you're going to have some city history, some state history, but then a huge focus on, the South Side history. So you'll see things from like when NAU was founded and the Grand Canyon National Park established, but, within all that, you're going to have, aspects of the tourist home and the Dunbar School and things that are very focused on the South Side. And we are going to be working with the Southside Community Association, especially Dr. Guthrie, on a lot of this text for the South Side. Next. And so this is just kind of all the sculpture elements, taken all together. Next. But the location of this is not yet determined, and there's a lot to consider. And this, of course, has to do with what is making the entire Downtown Connection Center project difficult to plan with, and which is the Rio de Flag project. So we have a couple of different options under consideration, and this is going to be kind of staff driven in its decision making as we take into all those considerations. The artists, we have option 1 and option 2. They designed this for the kind of the end of Mike's Pike, and that's in your bottom right-hand corner. And you kind of see that, they don't have the civic space kind of designed out in that image, but they kind of wanted it as a nice sight line and kind of as an entryway to that civic space. We're not sure when we would be allowed to put the sculpture there. So one of the option 2, is to put it temporarily kind of where they're going to need to move it after phase 2 of the DCC, have it in a temporary location, and then move it later. The other option is to just go to the plaza and either pick location 1 or location 2 and place it there permanently, and use other funding, Rio funding, to do art at the Civic Plaza whenever it's ready to go. And those are the 2 options that are under consideration. And that's it for my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for that. Looks like some beautiful stuff is going to happen at the DCC. Any questions for Jenna Weldon? Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the collaboration and partnership.
Right, and thank you. And again, I think Rhonda sent you out comment cards. We really would appreciate some feedback. These art concepts are not yet approved. They haven't gone to our commission yet. So any feedback you would give to us would help us inform our own commission. Thank you.
And thank you. So this brings us to our progress reports. This is, I think Heather has a few things to offer. If there's any questions about what's contained in the packet, this would be the time to offer them. So at this point, Heather?
Thank you, Chair Wessel. I will respect our time. I know we're very close. I will make one announcement that was not in the current events and then offer that if you have questions, please let me know. The federal appropriations have been announced for our transit funding, and the as anticipated, the bill that was signed and approved that provides 5 years of transit funding did increase our apportionment funding. So that's funding that we can count on. It also did include this increase in small transit intensive cities funding, which is the competitive funding awarded for high performing systems. And the appropriation will bring an additional $1.9 million to our community of each year. Sorry, $1.9 million is the one-time increase. And then of course that will be maintained over the next 4 years as well, as long as we remain competitive with those stick measures. I will just add that that's about $1 million more than we were anticipating. So good news, and we look forward to bringing that update in our fiscal year 2023 budget presentation at the May meeting. And with that, that's all I have, Chair Russell. Thanks for giving me a moment.
Well, thank you. Again, encourage you guys, TAC members, to go to the packet and look at the full update. So we are at high noon. Thank you all for your participation. The next meeting is the 18th of May, and it's a joint meeting with the board. And then our next formal TAC meeting is June 2nd. So thank you all for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your time today. Appreciate it.